Hello and welcome back to Beckler Guitars and Repair. And today we're checking out a screaming deal I got at a pawn shop. I paid $50 Canadian for this guitar, but it needs some work. Let's check it out. So yeah, I visit a lot of pawn shops because I find it's one of the only places you can still go to where you can still find pretty screaming deals on guitars. I typically like to go to the more privately owned pawn shops because I think you can get a little bit of a better deal there. There's no like strict rules in terms of discounts or anything else like that. And the people that own it tend to work there too. So you don't have to wait to talk to a manager. You can kind of just make a deal right on the spot. And I tend to go to ones that don't really specialize in music instruments. Like if you go to a privately owned pawn shop and there's only a couple guitars on the wall, not much, they typically don't sell a lot of guitars, so they don't know exactly what they're doing in terms of knowing the models and worth and stuff like that. So those are typically the places I go to. I'll typically ask if they have anything that's not on the shelf or something like that. And then they usually do. So this one was pulled out like underneath a shelf and kind of just forgotten about. And yeah, I asked them if they take 50 bucks for it because it has some obvious issues, and they went for it. So today we're going to go through this thing and figure out exactly what it needs in terms of repair, and then we're going to get it back up and running. So this is a Jackson DK-XT Dinky in trans red, and yeah, it's about a $500 to $600 guitar, so pretty good deal there. And again, it does need some work, but it's got some pretty nice features on this guitar. It's got a basswood body, it's got a quilted maple veneer for the top, it's got a string through design, Tone Pros bridge, so that's a nice part. And then the pickups are actually EMGs, but they're passive. So it's got an H4AN in the neck and an H4B in the bridge. Three-way switch, volume, tone. It's got a compound radius fingerboard, which is nice. Got some jumbo frets. The neck is bound. It's got a rosewood fingerboard. And yeah, two-way truss rod. It's a bolt-on neck. Maple neck, scarf join. It's got Jackson tuners, and it's made in India. So let's get it on the bench and see what issues it has. Alright, so the obvious stuff is it's got quite a few chunks taken out of it. So you can see here, down to the bare wood there. Another one right here. Now I'm going to go ahead and just color match these and drop fill them, just so you don't want bare wood showing a lot of the time on guitars because moisture can get in there, stuff like that, and it can swell and lead to other problems. So I'm at least going to color match this and seal it. Another thing I noticed was the action is pretty bad on this guitar. Like you can see the strings are super high, so it definitely needs a setup. And looking at the neck quickly, I can see the neck is straight. There's no twists or warps. I haven't checked to see if the truss rod works yet, but typically it's pretty rare that a truss rod is malfunctioning. So we can check that in a minute. The next thing I'm going to do is just plug it in and make sure the pickups are working. So they didn't have an amp to test it out in the store, so I kind of just took a gamble on that, and I'm pretty confident I would be able to fix it if I needed to. Well, it looks like this pot is just totally loose. Okay, so let's plug it in. Alright, I got it plugged in, but I got no electronics at all, no signal, so that's something we're going to have to figure out. Another issue I found is our strap button is super loose. So this may need tightening, or I might need to take the whole screw out and reinforce that hole so the new screw grabs. But we'll check that out in a second. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and take off the strings and open up the back and see if we can figure out the electronics. So I think the problem's pretty apparent. When I remove the output jack, it's not even connected. So we've got our ground and our lead right here, but they're not even hooked up. So I think that's likely the problem. I had a quick look at the other electronics, and everything else looks decent. There's no glaring issues aside from that this one pot being extremely loose. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten that up from the front. I'm going to replace this output jack because it's really beat up and it just could use replacing. So I'm going to replace the output jack, I'm going to tighten this tone pot, and then I'm going to solder it all together and then test it. Alright, before we go further, let's go ahead and test that to see if that worked. Let's see here. Volume works. Both pickups work. And tone works. Alright, so we got lucky. That was just a very simple problem, and it was an easy fix. And before we close it up, here's just a quick look at our cavity here. So we've got full-size pots, which is nice. These kind of rectangle, orangey brown type capacitors. You see they're pretty common. And then it looks like an offshore three-way switch, and all of our electronics wiring looks good, and our route looks good. Alright, so now the electronics are sorted, I'm going to check the truss rod. So yeah, the truss rod turns. It seems to be responsive, easy to turn, no issues there. And our frets appear to be in pretty nice shape. There's no divots or wear marks at all. The fretboard itself is a little gross. There's a little bit of like finger cheese on there. It definitely needs a cleaning and a buffing and maybe some lemon oil. But other than that, they appear to be in nice shape. I'm going to quickly check with a fret rocker just to see if there's any high frets or if there's any fret work that needs to be done in terms of like a level and recrown. The frets are actually really nice on this guitar. There's no high spots at all. Everything's nice and level. And the ends are really well done. They look like they're nice and rounded, and they're nice and smooth. The binding helps with that too, but there's no other sharp spots on the rounded over part either. So very nice frets on this actually. That means our setup should be easy. We should be able to get it nice and low with no issues. I'm going to check how the neck is set in terms of relief. And yeah, I might give it a little bit of a tighten, but it's set pretty well the way I want it to be set. So now I'm going to go ahead and clean it all up and buff the frets with the fret buffer just to make sure everything's nice and shiny and good to go. Alright, here's a look at our neck and fingerboard, now cleaned and polished and oiled. Looks like new, probably better than new. But yeah, looks great. And this rosewood looks really nice. It's really streaky. It looks like a high quality piece of wood. And we've got our acrylic shark teeth inlay. Alright, let's move on to the dings. So I mixed up some stain and just tried to sort of color match this guitar. I don't care if it's perfect, I just don't want it to be so glaring, and I want these to be sealed at least so no moisture can get in. So there's the top there, kind of a dark red. Then I used a little bit of a darker stain for the back. And I'm just going to go ahead and drop fill these with some lacquer, wait for them to dry, just so they're nice and smooth. They won't grip on anything when you're touching it, it'll just be smooth, and it'll be sealed so no moisture can get in. Alright, here's a look at our pickups and our pickup cavities. So in the bridge, we've got an EMG H4. It's got a quick connect system there. And there's a look at our cavity. Looks like a nice clean route. You can see our base wood at the bottom of the route there. And then the top is just this very thin quilted veneer. And there's a little bit of buffing compound in there and a ground wire. So pretty standard. Looks good. And they fit in there pretty tight. There we go. And then here is our bridge pickup. Let's see here. Again, in there quite tight. There we are. And this is the EMG H4A. And there's a look at our route. Again, there's another ground wire there. It's shielded, same with the bridge cavity. You can see our base wood at the bottom of the route. And yeah, looks good. Everything looks as it should there. And then this is our Tone Pros bridge, two-pneumatic style. And it's got two little screws here that lock it to the post so that it doesn't come off when you're like changing strings or something, which is a nice touch. Gibson has a couple models like this on some of their, and it's always appreciated when you're working on it. And yeah, there it is, pretty standard. Intonation is adjustable, and then these little screws just lock it into place on the posts. And then you adjust your height with these two posts here, and they're slotted on the top as well, so you can use a flathead screwdriver. So yeah, our neck pocket is actually quite tight, which is nice. You don't see a lot of Fenders with this even. So yeah, a little hard to remove, which is good. That means it's got a nice tight fit in there. And you can see on our neck here, there's no other markings other than this, which says 2018-7. And yeah, just some nice clean holes there. And here's a look at our neck pocket, which says 2018 with some other writing in there. It's a nice clean route. You can see the base wood as well as this little veneer there. And yeah, it fits in very tight. You can almost lift the whole thing just with the friction of the neck. So that's good to see. Alright, the guitar is all fixed and cleaned up, so I just want to go over condition before we restring it and set it up. And here's a look at the headstock. So the headstock's in really nice condition. No scratches or dings. Good shape. Truss rod is responsive. We've got our black synthetic nut. And as I showed before, the fretboard's in nice shape. Super polished frets, all level, and a nice piece of rosewood. You can see the fret ends there, they're all super rounded and polished. And the neck is bound on this one. And here's a better look at our ding repairs. So these are drop filled with lacquer and like vaguely color matched. I got pretty close. And they don't look amazing, but it's just a drop fill, so it's just to prevent from moisture getting into the bare wood. And unless you're a little bit closer, they're a little harder to see. And they're nice and smooth, so they will never snag on anything. But the quilt top veneer looks nice. I really like the red, so it's got a kind of a black burst around the edges. It looks good. And other than the, you know, the large gouges and dings, there's not much else in terms of scratches on the top. So take a look at the back. And yeah, there's a couple little scuffs on the back. Here's another look at our repaired dings. One there, one there. Kind of a larger one there. And this back one was pretty substantial. But again, it's nice and smooth to the touch, and it's not going to catch on anything, and it's going to prevent any moisture from getting into the wood and making matters worse. And then we've got our strap buttons, one on the horn, one on the back. I tightened this one up, so that's all it needed. It's good to go now. And our neck plate. Look at our maple neck. You can see the scarf join right here. And I'll look at our Jackson headstock with our Jackson branded tuners. And there's our handcrafted in India. So, alright, yeah, pretty decent shape other than the large dings that have been repaired. So I'm going to go ahead and restring this, set it up, and we'll get some specs and check the setup. Alright, getting some quick specs, weighing at a very light 7 pounds 1 ounce, or 3.2 kilograms. Our passive EMGs are reading a 12.98 in the bridge, a 12.91 in the neck, and the middle a 6.68. Width of the nut is a 1.69 or a 43.03 millimeters, and at the 12th fret that is a 52 millimeters or a 2.05 inches. Neck depth at the first fret is a 0.76 or a 19.36 millimeters, and at the 12th fret that's a 21.75 millimeters or a 0.856 inches. So here's a look at our neck profile. So it's a really kind of a flat D profile. So yeah, pretty flat, and then it flattens out even more by the 12th. So it's a good shredder neck. And I managed to get a nice setup on this guitar. So using our notch straight edge, you can see that the neck is set nice and straight, and the truss rod's nice and tight with just a very little gap between the notch straight edge and the fingerboard. And then in the cowboy chord area, you can see that when I use the 3rd fret that the string's resting just gently against that 1st fret. It tells us that the neck is straight, truss is tight, and we've got a well-cut nut there too. So good action there. And then at the 12th fret, we've got on the low E, it's sitting at just about a 1.25, and at the high E, it's just at about a 1. So yeah, nice low action. Alright, I'm just going to go up and down the neck to make sure there's no buzzing or fretting out anywhere. And I like to speed up this part, but if you want to hear it in real time, you can slow down the player to 25%. Alright, so nice low action and no hint of buzz or fretting out anywhere. And the fret ends are super nice and smooth, nothing grabbing anywhere. And yeah, the strings are stretched, it's been intonated, it's ready to go. So let's go ahead and plug it in and see how it sounds. So my basement actually just blew up. So I'm plugged into my 1965 Fender Deluxe Reverb reissue. And here in my settings, I'm just gonna do a little bit of clean, and then a little bit of overdrive, and then a little bit of heavier distortion, because that's kind of what these pickups are for. All right, actually sounding surprisingly nice clean, like super clear and articulate. You can hear every note. Yeah, they sound really good clean. Let's go ahead and try with a little bit of overdrive. So yeah, they sound great with overdrive too. I'm really impressed with these pickups. I mean, it sounds like you can play proper classic rock with these things. They sound great. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and try it with a little bit more distortion. final thoughts on the Jackson DKXY Dinky. I mean, for $50, this is a hell of a guitar. It's nice and light. I really like the neck. It's super shreddy and fast, and I really like the profile. It just really feels good. It's got those big giant frets, so it's really easy to play and bend. And the fretwork on this was actually amazing. Like, I barely had to do anything. I just gave it a quick polish and a cleaning, and the action's crazy low. You can bend it like nothing. It's a really well done neck, and it's got really well done frets on there as well. So that was a big surprise, especially for a guitar in this price point, even brand new. It did need some work. It wasn't too bad though. It just basically needed a setup. The output jack was off of the terminals there, so I had to put those back on, and the old output jack was really beat up, so I ended up replacing it. And then it did have some really bad dings and gouges around the edges, but we drop filled those, kind of color matched them a little bit, and then set it up with some new Ernie Ball Super Slinkies, and this thing just came to life. I was really surprised about the pickups. I've tried passive EMGs before, and from what I remember, I wasn't too impressed, but these ones are great. Super articulate, super clear. They sounded great, clean, with a little bit of overdrive. You can really pull off that classic rock tones, and then with distortion and heavier stuff, it really responded well to those as well. So very versatile pickups. You can play pretty much anything on this guitar, and it's light and it plays well. And yeah, it looks nice too. I really like that quilt top. It is a veneer, but there's lots of movement to it, and it's got a really nice kind of like a burst border on it. And the neck felt great. It stayed in tune really well. Yeah, not a lot of bad things to say about it. I mean, for $50 at a pawn shop, you can really find something, and if you put a little bit of work into it, you can get something like this, like a great playing and sounding guitar that you have very little money into. And this is kind of my favorite thing to do on this channel, is to find old guitars, bring them back to life, and get them playing and sounding the best they can. And if you are interested in this particular guitar, I'm going to have it for sale up on our Reverb page. So I'll put that link in the description as well. But that's going to be it for today. Thank you for tuning in to Beckler Guitars and Repair. I'll have more for you really soon. Thanks a lot.